intends to never play another game for the franchise. Alrighty, everybody, welcome back to another video of NBA Now. I'm your boy Dom, and we're gonna get right into things here today. So today, we actually have some news in the NBA world. Now I know I'm a little bit late on this video. Was kind of doing some stuff today, but hopefully you guys do enjoy. But yeah, Ben Simmons, right? Obviously, we've known that he's not going back to the Sixers. It seems to be fully done. But we got concrete evidence of that today, and we got a super reliable source coming out and saying it, and that's Adrian Wojnarowski, right? We all know Woj. Although he kind of lost to Shams during the draft this last year, we know what Woj is about. He's a reliable source, and when Woj says it, it's pretty much a guarantee. And Woj came out and said, and I'll quote it here, he says, ESPN sources, Philadelphia 76ers All-Star Ben Simmons will not report for opening of training camp next week and intends to never play another game for the franchise. Simmons hasn't spoken to the team since late August, which is almost a month ago, meeting when he was communicated this message to the Sixers officials. And I mean, this is about as concrete evidence as we can get that Simmons is getting traded or he's not bluffing. You know what I mean? There was definitely a significant part of this offseason where we were like, all right, are the 76ers going to try and call Simmons' bluff and, make him play so that he re-raises some of his value that I think we all know that he has. But, obviously with the NBA being a business, some of that value is just not there because teams are going to leverage it as much as they can. And at this point, it's very leverageable. And so this kind of brought, with this happening and yesterday, the only other news to happen in like 2 weeks, John Wall officially, coming to the Rockets and them deciding that he will not play for that franchise again as well. Those two rumors almost culminated. We saw a lot of John Wall videos fly across the internet for, a day and a half or so. With just trade ideas, and now these two things are they're slowly starting to creep together, and it almost seems to becoming a possibility, right? Not something you would have thought last offseason or even coming to this offseason, because I mean, if we thought Ben Simmons was going to be a Rocket, we thought it was going to be for James Harden last offseason. Now after this year that he's had, what we saw in the playoffs and just the constant continued struggles and repeated unsuccess of his jump shot, his value's gone down. The Malcolm Brogdon trade has been offered. I'd assume that something with CJ has been offered from the Blazers as long as Dame is okay with moving on from CJ to get Ben Simmons. And then I'm sure there's other packages out there, like obviously from the Timberwolves. At this point, if they still want to give up DeAndre Russell, I don't know, but how do you make the money work otherwise? And his value is drastically fallen from the start of even the offseason, right? You look at the start of the offseason, we were talking about 4 first-round picks, current All-Star, as somewhat, realistic. We were thinking the 76ers were overvaluing him by wanting an All-Star level player, multiple young players, and like 4 or 5 first-round picks, right? And we were like, maybe not the young players, but we can kind of see somewhat, a little less than that. And as the offseason's gone on, it's been all-star player and a couple picks, and then role player and a few picks. And now it's kind of somewhat in between there, where we really don't know what the picks, that you're going to be getting back for Ben Simmons are going to be. But we're kind of narrowing in on that borderline 20-point per game scoring guard as kind of what we're looking at, similar to a Malcolm Brogdon or, in this case, a John Wall. And I think that this trade is really becoming, more of a possibility, especially when you look at some of the guys on these two rosters, as obviously, behind Simmons, there's not a ton of point guard depth on the 76ers roster. Now, you have Seth Curry, who you could run at the point guard. He's not really a point guard. He's obviously, I think he's clearly more of an off guard in that shooting role, less of a playmaker. Tyrese Maxey, I even think, isn't quite that much of a playmaker, and I would play him as an off guard, although we can play point guard. Shake Milton has actually been somewhat decent at playmaking. Still more of an off guard though, and I mean that's most of your guards behind him, right? I mean Danny Green's somewhat a guard / a forward. Same with Matisse Thybulle. Neither of those guys really having that playmaking ability to run the point guard position. So there's just not a lot of playmaking guards behind Simmons on the 76ers roster. And when you head over to the Rockets roster, you're looking at, if you bring in John Wall, this is a guy that averaged almost 7 assists this last season, which, is pretty much what Simmons did. Now, I think at this point, we all know that Simmons is, especially, on the break and stuff like that, he is one of the best passers in the entire league. But that's not what, his trade value's been focused on. His trade value's been focused on his shot, and it's been, it's hurt it. But yeah, John Wall would come in and he'd still be a good playmaker. It would add playmaking back to the roster after losing such a significant playmaker. And he'd be a better half-court playmaker. I think sometimes Simmons struggles in that half-court playmaking, just area. Similar to Lonzo, I think both of them obviously thrive off of the break when it comes to their playmaking, and both of them are some of the best playmakers in the league. But I think if you compare it to a Jokic, right, Jokic can do both. Jokic can sling it across the court one-handed to, somebody for a dunk, or he can behind the back pass it right under the rim to a defender between somebody's legs, right? And so, you're kind of bringing in some more elements of a half-court playmaking style, which works better, I think, with the team that you have around Joel Embiid, right? You've got a lot of guys, you got shooters around him, you've got good defenders and stuff like that, and obviously Embiid himself is going to be more of a half-court guy as well, so I think that would complement well. I think John Wall would be forced. He'd be tempted to take the three, but he'll shoot it. It may not be great, and maybe if Simmons actually shot them, he might be on par with John Wall. John Wall's never been that great of a three-point shooter. If I pull up his career three-point percentage is about 29%, right? 30%. Not fantastic, but 3 for 10, 1 out of 3. It's not terrible. You live with it. This last season, does it say? I will check what his last season 3-point percentage is. I want to say that it wasn't fantastic, just as it's John Wall, but I'm not entirely sure. So this last season, his 3-point percentage was about 31%, so not terrible. His career high is 37% in his 2017-2018 season, which was the last year that he was an all-star. At that point, I want to say that was Simmons' rookie year. And so, is it possible for him to potentially get back to something like that? He shot over 35% 3 times in his career. It's not out of the realm of possibility, and, he's improved since he was a rookie, and especially his second season where he only shot 7% from 3. That's terrible. But, yeah, he's definitely improved, and he's willing to shoot them. This is a guy that last season he shot 6 attempts per game. He only made 2, but he shot 6 attempts. If he's open, he's going to take it. And that's not bad. That's just what you need. It just, even if you're just willing to take it, that helps your team so much. And just depending on how the defense on the other team, and just how some of the other shooters on the team are doing, will kind of depend on how that works out for Wall, if he ends up on the Sixers. But then, if you're also looking at this Rockets roster, you're kind of thinking who's going to get packaged in this. Well, Eric Gordon's contract is probably a little bit much to kind of make the money work. Now, there's ways where if you're sending Danny Green and like Kirk Maz and like Niang over, now that forces you to have to wait a little bit because of the recent signed restrictions and stuff. So I think that would push the trade to November, which would be about a month after the season starts, which season is starting to creep up on us here pretty quick. And right, it's gonna be about a month. I want to say, or right, maybe right at the start of the season. I want to say it started. So it's supposed to start sometime in October. But yeah, I mean, it would push it. No, it's supposed to start. I will figure this out. But yeah, I mean, regardless, the trade would have to wait until November. So at this point, that's still a couple months away, which does, possibly hurt Simmons' value more, or maybe it hurts the Rockets trade package more as the 76ers kind of break it down more. And, that could be scary if you're a Rockets fan, right? Because Eric Gordon's contract currently, has him staying on this team for a good chunk of money until he is 34 years old, and now that last year isn't guaranteed, but it's, I don't know how much longer. Eric Gordon, we know he's past his prime. He's been a good player for you, but I just don't know even if he's still good at that point, if you even want him on the team, because that's so much older than your timetable, because Christian Wood just be getting towards his 30s as long as you're re-signing him after his current contract ends at that point, and that's going to be your oldest piece on your team once you're kind of pushing yourself back into playoff contention and potentially contention, right? But there's definitely ways to work around this, and as a 76ers fan, there's some guys on this roster that aren't making a ton of money that you would maybe want to try and snag with a John Wall instead of an Eric Gordon, right? Because if you do John Wall and Eric Gordon, that's pretty much it. You're not getting anybody else back of significant value, just because I think these lower contract guys like a Kenyon Martin, Jayshawn Tate, and a Kevin Porter Jr., they're not getting moved. Maybe you get back a Kyrie Thomas, who secured himself a multi-year deal either this last season or this last off-season. To be honest, did not watch enough of him to know why, but he got a non-guaranteed 1.7 up to $2.1 million deal for the next 3 seasons. So shout out to him for being able to do that. So maybe he's a guy that could get thrown in, if but how much he's going to do for you, I don't really know. And so as the 76ers, I would personally, if I was them, I would go with a Ben Simmons and a Danny Green for John Wall, maybe a couple picks. And then I would try and snag like a Daniel House and maybe a David Nwaba as well. Probably prioritizing David Nwaba. I know House, I believe, is a little bit better of a shooter. And he's a little bit bigger, but I think David Nwaba being locked up for a few more years is nice, especially on just that $4 million contract that he's under right now. They both average about 9 points per game this last season, so it wouldn't be too significantly different between the two, but obviously the money's a little bit different and stuff. But if you're throwing in Danny Green, Ben Simmons for, we'll say, David Nwaba, who's making the more out of the two, for John Wall, I guess with the Nwaba, there's something with the salary increase that might mess with the trade, but the salary does match up, due to Danny Green's extra $10 million that you're kind of sending over, which is a little bit of shooting lost, but I think, maybe adding some more defense on that perimeter, would benefit the 76ers, especially losing, a defensive player of the year candidate in Ben Simmons. Now, if you make that House, the only thing that's restricting this is not being able to trade it until November 5th because of Danny Green. So, yes, this still has to have you wait a little bit. But I don't see that being too much of an issue, right? Like I said, if you kind of agree verbally to the trade, it most likely won't fall through, right? Obviously, we kind of saw that happen with Kemba Walker and OKC. They had agreed to the Kemba Walker for Al Horford swap for the most part, prior to trading being opened up, and then it was a month or so until that kind of happened. Kemba Walker having a decreased value, Al Horford, I would say slightly raising his value from the year before when he was in Philly, funny enough. And that as long as there's some verbal commitment from both sides, you should be fine on trade value staying relatively the same. Now it's really where it comes into the 76ers, where they don't want to trade him. They want to have the value. They want to get the most value that they can out of him, and it's not looking like any team's going to oblige with that. So it'll be interesting to see how that kind of unfolds, and I would not be shocked if we see Ben Simmons in a Rockets jersey this upcoming season. Personally, if I'm the Rockets, I would be playing a lineup of Ben Simmons, if I start with the point guard, I'd be playing a lineup of Kevin Porter Jr., Jalen Green, a mix at small forward of somebody like a Eric Gordon or a Jayshawn Tate, maybe even, depending on, who you're keeping, a David Nwaba could start, a Daniel House could be a decent starter, or even a Kenyon Martin Jr. Could start. So you have a plethora of options that are, somewhat relatively all right. It's kind of who you would want to fit lineup wise. Maybe you want to keep Eric Gordon as like a 6-man role on this team. And then at the 4 is where I'd put Simmons, and at the 5 I'd have Christian Wood. Obviously, Christian Wood's gonna be able to space the ball. I heard that I cannot remember who compared Christian Wood to Karl-Anthony Towns, but on the Through the Wire podcast, one of the people there said, he's pretty much a smaller Karl-Anthony Towns, right? A little smaller and a little quicker Karl-Anthony Towns. I would say Christian Wood is better defensively than Karl-Anthony Towns, but I completely agree with that comparison. He was almost like a 4, like he's a big 4, because he plays big for 6'10", so he's kind of a big 4 playing the 5 position. And next to Simmons, that would be pretty much fantastic, right? And then, regardless of who you have at that 3 position, that allows you for some switchability, having some bigger guards in KPJ and Jalen Green. And then, obviously, Simmons kind of being your anchor. Also, that's also going to give you great playmaking, having KPJ and Ben Simmons. And then it's going to be really solid shooting, having Christian Wood at that center position and moving Simmons down so you can get more perimeter shooting. I think that's something that Philly never tried. You know what I mean? They went out, they got Tobias Harris, they signed him to a super big deal, and you weren't able to say, okay, let's try Simmons at the 4 next to Joel Embiid. And make sure that we have 3 shooters out there. That's just something that they were reluctant to do. They wanted to play him at the 1, and if if a team acquires him and kind of moves him positions and works with him on that, and then even says works with him every day, hey, put up 100 jump shots, we don't care if you make them, because and I think that's something that the Houston fans will have to lean into too. They're gonna need to get excited when he takes them. You know what I mean? So that he can have the confidence to just take them. Because, like I said with John Wall, he takes them. He's not fantastic at it, but he'll take them. Now, he's probably a better shooter than Simmons at the end of the day. But just the confidence and the willingness to shoot the shot goes a long way, because defenders have to step up on you a little bit at that point, even if you're not a great shooter, because you're willing to shoot it, and there's a chance of it going in. Now, are they still going to rather want that than a Christian Wood 3-point shot, or a Jalen Green drive to the lane to get a dunk or something like that? Obviously, they're going to want a Ben Simmons 3-pointer. But then that leaves you opportunity to crash to the basket once you're willing to take them, right? You crash to the basket, you can get a kick out opportunity. There's just so much that opens up from you being willing to shoot it, because even if you catch that and you're open and there's a guy a little ways off you, Ben Simmons is a guy that's got that motor that he can run at you. And I think the best way to build around him would be like how you build around Giannis. In a sense where you've got shooters, and if they're going to sit off you, you're willing to take them, and you're also willing to punish them by just driving straight at them, and maybe just getting to the line. That also, you got to, even if you're not great at shooting them at the line, got to be willing to get there, because that's free points. Even if you're only making one, that's a free point on that possession. Which isn't bad. You know, there's worse things that you could not score. You know what I mean? And so some of his confidence, I think, will help, just being moved scenery-wise. And it'll be interesting to see how that kind of plays into things after the Simmons trade. I think whoever does end up trading for him, if it's the Rockets, if it's somebody else, will be looked at as the winner of the trade, you know, upon the trade and months after. Because I think it will be a loss for the Sixers. At least asset-wise, if you're looking at it like that. Like, pure tangibly asset-wise, on paper, they're going to lose this trade, no matter who they trade it to. At this point, it's a done deal that you're not going to get the value that you think you have in him, and his value has significantly even decreased than the start of the offseason. So, the quicker the Sixers move on this, to get a decent offer, the sooner, or the better the better offer they're going to get, I think. And so I think, you know, Daryl Morey has kind of fumbled the bag this offseason in this Simmons trade. And, you know, let's see if he can try and make up for it and get the most out of it that's possible at this point, with the rest of the offseason and maybe even leading into next season. Now, I'd be shocked if Simmons, you know, by 2 months in isn't traded. Just because that's a lot of money to be wasting, even if you're not paying him. It's still counted on that salary cap. You can't just go throw $28 million at another guy because you're not paying Simmons, in quotes, that, you know, that money, because he's on the cap sheet, and you have to wait until he doesn't play before you can, no, we're not paying you for you not playing. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, I think it's more than likely that, you know, we're rapidly approaching a Simmons trade, especially as this news comes out from a reliable source. If he was traded in the next 48 hours, or agreed upon to be traded in the next 48 hours, it wouldn't shock me either. And I definitely, at that point, will have another Simmons video on the channel. It's pretty much the only content to make at this point in the offseason. We're all just getting anxious, I think, for the season to start, and you know, news is kind of slowing down. But it's been good to see, you know, some of these trades flying around, and it's been interesting to watch just the John Wall and the Simmons things kind of develop. If they aren't traded to each other, I don't know who wants John Wall, and really what Philly could get back for Ben Simmons and other places. You know, other than the teams that I kind of listed already in the video, but it'll kind of be a wait and see, I guess. I've made these last couple videos a little bit longer, so if you guys do enjoy that, let me know. To be honest, I didn't mean to. I've kind of wanted to keep them between 15 and 25 minutes. I've been leaning towards that 25 the last couple videos, so if you guys are cool with that, let me know. If you want me to make sure I'm keeping them shorter, also, you know, feel free to leave that in the comments below. But yeah, I appreciate everybody watching them, and that's gonna be it for today. So I'll see you tomorrow. It's been your boy Dom from NBA Now, and peace out.